Jojo, I want to thank you so much for joining us here at KoSA. We've been talking about it for a while, and I'm really happy you're able to join us.
My pleasure.
I wanted to ask you your opinion on something. There's always this continuing discussion about, the idea of groove. Is that something that can be learned, taught, like some other subjects? What are your thoughts about approaching teaching groove or learning groove? Is that something innate? Is that something that can be learned? Your opinion on that?
Well, that's a tricky one. I think groove is personality. Let's put it that way, right? Let's go away from like the drumming. Let's talk about cooking. Now, everybody can cook to a certain degree, can learn how to cook, but not everybody's going to be able to create magic with cooking. It's going to be good, all right, it's good, and you'll learn something about the tomato sauce, so you can make it a little bit better or a little more exciting. Some people can open a restaurant. They're good enough to open a restaurant. They know enough about it. But, to really kind of create an event, so like, okay, I got to show you something, even with something really simple, as like, simple ingredients. That's kind of like you need taste and experience, and it's not just what you learn, but it's also the development of your taste buds and your life experience of what makes food enjoyable. And that's not just how many minutes you put it on and how hot the stove is, but it's also knowing when to serve what, in which environment. It's like you don't serve that wine at this time of the day with this type of meal. So, you know what I'm saying? So groove is understanding all these things, and some of those things can be learned, but I would say it's more experienced, So I would never attempt to teach someone how to groove, because I don't think I can do it. I don't think anyone can do it. I'm not saying that there's someone out there, but so far I have not met anyone. But I think it's fair to say that you can maybe awake curiosity for where the action is and expose people to like, okay, check out this. This is groovy, check that out. And I think it has to do with many things also, like languages, certain languages are more angular, so some languages have more of a swing in it. I think evidently people who come from countries that have more of a swing inside of the language are going to have more of that feel in their playing, because it's a part of who they are. So there's many aspects of it, and to start the discussion, we probably would have to confine on what groove is, and that to me is the element that creates this trance in a way, like I think it like we all in all the rhythms, it all comes out of Africa. So, and I think if you repeat the same motion or anything for a long time, then it becomes a meditation. And I think groove is a meditation on life.
I was going to say, I like your analogy to food, and food is cultural sensitive, of course. And so as we grow up, and I'm seeing this now that you mentioned that, I'm seeing, of course, we know, and I certainly live this, music is just another language, or an extension of your language. So everybody's going to speak music and rhythm within the context of their language.
Well, I think music is languages.
Languages. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Better said. And then food. I mean, as you were saying this, to me, food is extremely important. Why is it important? In my cultural context, I grew up in an Italian family where food was the most important thing ever. And if somebody arrived at the door, you fed them, and you share food, you share an espresso, and that is very meaningful.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural thing that is important to you. Therefore, your taste buds have been not conditioned, but calibrated there. And you have a points of references that other cultures may not even have any kind of experience. So that would affect that musically. And so the groove is, have you listened to all of this music in your past, in your culture, in your so those points of references, right? Am I making a...
No, I really agree on all these points. It's just, there's all these different elements, metronomical elements, but there's music which is incredibly groovy that has a tendency to speed up or to slow down, which is not really, some people don't believe, okay, no, groove has to be not moving, and I think all those things, it's just like basically, what is it that you create in the end? What is the atmosphere that you're able to like create? Is it groovy? And that's it's an inspiring thing. It's a sexy thing. It's a funny thing, or it can be many things. You know what I'm saying? But it has to be something. So.
But would you say that the learned part of it is the mathematical part, if you're dividing, like mental division of pulse?
Well, look. Yes, pulse is definitely, it's an aspect of it. But okay, let me give you a good analogy of like, my showcase the problem that we have in this discussion. Okay, let's say like a master of groove, John Bonham. All right, and then let's take another master of groove like Milton Banana. Okay, now ask John Bonham to play Milton Banana's music, or Milton Banana to play John Bonham's music. Well, it probably is going to be, it's going to work because both guys are good musicians, but I don't think like neither of those guys will be able to achieve that effect of intensity of groove if they in a different environment. So John Bonham is the John Bonham groove, and not the bossa nova of like Milton Banana, So they're both masters in their own field, creating that particular vibe, And as I'm saying, like you take out, that goes for like so many things. So like, what is groove? Groove is also the expression of who you are, and go like, okay, now if you want to know about funk, evidently, what will lead you to be able to play funk is the complete understanding of James Brown. You can bypass a lot of things, but not James Brown. And you have to know this. And you will have to get into this. And I think it's very easy to do that because it's so awesome that, like, just have to listen to it and you go like, and you will want to know how this works. And then you play that, Repetition and pulse is important. I think, you want to learn a song, then just play it 50 times back to back. Then you will have a deeper understanding of how that song breathes, Repetition is very important. I think groove and repetition, they're related. Motion, it's like you keep repeating the same thing over and over and over, then, it elevates you into a different zone. So groove is connected to that. If you never do this, then you will not experience that.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Just changing the subject, another idea that you brought out in class, and I thought it was quite interesting, and it's an abridged version of the words of how to, in our achievement of music and our achievement of making music, our achievement of doing anything in life actually, and I thought it was very well said, and I know it got me thinking. I said, that's exactly how we should be thinking, and I know some people in the class also lit up. The fact you said, quote unquote, and almost correct me if I'm wrong. Said, let's not be so concerned about perfection, but more about clarity. And that is very deep and very meaningful.
Well, it's also helpful, I think. It's also helpful, like perfection is a term that relates to the attention that we get for what we do. And also perfection is deteriorating up an approach. There's no finish line. Okay, now it's perfect. I mean, the only thing which is perfect is death. That's, that was perfection. Is you end it. There's nothing else to be said. And we shouldn't aspire to that. aspire to that in like music. Music should continue to go. And I think if you exchange the notion of perfection with clarity, you will be able to achieve a similar effect, but without the expense that your vision will be blindfolded to certain doorways to creativity and to great experiences. I'm saying, because in perfection, when we talk about perfection, you always juxtapose yourself with an alter ego that is higher than you are. So you always, you kind of never, it doesn't give you an opportunity to be yourself. With the clarity, you completely focuses on who you are at that particular point. So it doesn't have to be perfect as long as I get the point across. That's all I'm concerned about. And it's been very helpful. I've been having more enjoyable experiences in creating music since I abandoned the perfection notion. You know, I'm able to move on quicker. I'm wasting less time with things that I should not waste time. It's like, okay, is this good enough? Yeah, it's not perfect. I kind of screwed this up a little bit, but it's still okay. Move on.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, in the same light, obviously we have to learn our craft. We have to learn to play, be able to play what we're thinking, technique, be able to address the instrument, getting a good sound, all of these things. That's an obvious. But going beyond that, what you do with it, it's a very individual thing. And that's the other thing, talking about individual cultural. I mean, when you look at countries like Brazil, countries like India or Cuba, with each in their own, they're huge. I mean, just Cuba alone. I mean, I tell people it's an island, but it's a musical continent where there's so much going on because of their history. And every country is like that. And they're all building their individual and the collective are incredible. I mean, what they're doing. And they're not necessarily paying attention to what somebody else is doing. They're bringing up their voice as individuals and as a collective. And have you've been to Cuba with us, and I mean, you saw what is going on there, and the level at which people are not only musically aware, but technically and also culturally what they're doing with that music and beyond. What are your thoughts on this? What is going on the larger scale that is so massive, and maybe for me, is it because we're spinning around the globe faster and we're seeing it more often, and it has always been there, or is it just much bigger than it used to be?
Well, I mean, it's a big question, and obviously. Trying to understand, if you want to express who we are in correlation to the world that we live in, because that's what an artist really does. Like we share it with other people. We just don't do it just for ourselves, usually. And that communication aspect, it's like, what is it that we want to communicate, really? Well, now I see. Academia and schools reach the end of the line. Not just music education, but education in general. Because it's a very outdated format that was actually minted or coined to serve the development in industrialization. It's like 200 years old. It doesn't really work. Like people are right now educated in schools for jobs that will no longer exist by the time they graduate, right? So the world is blue now, and in 2 weeks it can be orange. Like you don't know what is going to happen if some people make decisions with YouTube. Oh, you know what? No more free music on YouTube. There's going to be a robot that's going to detect everything which is music, and everything which is music has to be, you have to pay for it if you want to. It's going to change the world in 2 days. Not in so this is the time that we live in. It could be changed really, really, really quickly. So education has to catch up with that, number one, and it has to prepare people to step from one paradigm into another one on a whim. And so a lot of the knowledge that we have, I mean, knowledge is never useless, but how we process it. So for instance, I go and I see a drummer practicing left foot clave, and I go like, what do you do? So I'm practicing like left foot clave, and that person doesn't speak a word of Spanish, so he's completely outside of the culture of the music that he developing a device where the music comes from. So the only thing that it's good for is to impress a fellow drummer, really. So it's a waste of time, really. So a lot of that is happening. I'm not saying reading music is useless, but it's not as important as it used to be. Now other things are much more important. So I think we have to become what we're supposed to be, which is like communicators and artists, and what schools show you what to do might not be useful at all by the time you're about to get on your way. And I'm not a psychic, I'm just observing how radically fast and how exponential technology is developing, and we have to develop our human capability of improvisation to keep up with that.
Right, and now you mentioned this word improvisation, and I'm of the opinion that we as drummers and musicians studying music, improvised music, and I'll also go back to classical music. Originally, a lot of it was improvised, and there was a lot of improvisation in it. Certainly many cultures, there's a great degree of improvisation. We learn improvisation. So the art of improvisation, I believe, is the key to dealing with the future and dealing with the new music, the new realities. And we can change on a dime. Whatever happens, if they shut down, and now this is happening, we adjust because we have learned to improvise. And what you're saying about and the educational system does not teach generally to improvise a situation.
It doesn't teach creativity, or it doesn't open doors to creativity. It doesn't teach how to learn. It just it teaches how to process acquisitions of information for long enough to be able to graduate, to pass the test. Then everybody is going to forget everything anyway. Then schools are also good for lobbying. You come out, you have a network already that is going to help you in your professional career. But it's going to change. It's changed already. It's just the remnants of the old protocols, so old millennium things that are still lingering here and there, but it will evaporate. The same as 1900s, the early 1900s were still, the early 20th century was still 1900s. It wasn't up until 1920 when the 20th century really became the 20th century with Albert Einstein and machine guns and sound recording and penicillin, and all those things that made the 20th century. Right. Before it was the 1800s.
And in light of that, do you feel that is because of technology? I mean, technology has facilitated and fast-forwarded all of these changes. Now, my question is it because of the huge investment in technology that we have progressed so far in that area that has affected everything on the planet? And because at the same time, there's less of an investment in culture, that things are going in that direction?
Well, investment in who invests and why? You have to look at that. Certain things are come with a certain territory. I think right now we live in we're when it concerns music, and art. We are popular culture is at the end of the rope right now, and one of the reasons for that is that people don't know the difference between what's good and what's bad, because their curiosity for it is bypassed. You know, we're not really concerned with that anymore. So what's very scary too is, like, you know, jazz is not jazz anymore. Rock and roll is not rock and roll anymore, because those styles were created out of the necessity of expression, because the people who created jazz, they were denied access to the popular music, so they created their own culture so they could play music. The same happened with like rock and roll and hip hop and all of that. Louis Armstrong did not learn to play jazz in a music school, and Charlie Chaplin didn't learn how to make films in film schools, and neither did Orson Welles. So the truth is going to happen. It's going to come out of the street again, I guess. You know, so I'm trying to pay attention to that. You know, and creativity will find a way, even if the drum set will not be necessary anymore to like do it. And you know, the devices change, and the drum, you know, when we hit a drum, an acoustic drum, a piece of wood hits a membrane, we connect to 60,000 years of like human history, and we are analog, so we're operating an analog instrument. It's going to create a different experience. But right now, our minds are going to be calibrated, and we surrender more to the limitations of the current limitations of like digital technology, so we can actually use them, right? So, and never before we had means of communication that were so extremely fast, and never before people felt more isolated and like lonely. And so the same thing is like happening in like music. Like there's a current generation of like rock or pop music, you know. And to me, one of the active ingredients about rock music was always rebellion. And rebellion is something as an evolutionary reason to exist. It's important to disagree and renew, right? So this is right now. We have a whole generation that of conformism and consumerism, which is disguised as individualism and rebelliousness, and that's really scary. That is really scary, and this is happening in rock and roll and the type of style, musical styles that I grew up loving and that I cannot love anymore. You know, it's like, why should I listen to anything in jazz going on today if I can listen to a Monk record? You know, I mean, I'm not to think there's always creative people, there's people playing wonderful music, but the cultural relevance is not the same anymore.
Right. And as part of the problem, do you think that because technology has allowed us to go so much faster, movements so much faster, and spin so much faster, there isn't time for this rebellion? There isn't time for anybody to rebel because now it's the next thing, and then those people now are marginalized, or that movement, that thought might be marginalized. This is just an idea that's just going through my mind, that we see things go so quickly. So there isn't time to think. The technology, I mean, your phone is outdated in 3 months. This was unthinkable 20 years ago.
Well, maybe drummers can deal with it because time is our business. You know, we are architects, not of space, but we are architects of time. We can shape time. We can make things with time. You know, we can make something appear fast, or slow. So in many cultures, like drummers are shamans. You know, they do certain things, and I think the drum has that quality. You know, you set up a world-class violin player on a street corner, and people will just walk by him. And you put a kid with like a bucket that drums, he will draw a crowd. There's something about it that is very deep, and two little drummers actually exploit that power of like getting over there. Too many drummers get too geeky, you know, building little incredible ships inside bottles, as opposed to build just an ordinary ship that works where you can actually get from A to B. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting. And I think, I mean, just to finish off that thought, it's very interesting because we're talking about 60,000 years with a stick and a membrane of history. And still in the future, I mean, that's the same, it's going to be the same thing. I mean, that's going to exist, that communication. And we are, like as you say, the drummer is the shaman, and we have that power. That's not going to change.
I would believe so. Yeah, I would believe so. I think it still works somehow. You know, don't let it go. It's worth something to fight for, just because it's an instrument that still appears to work. You know, and I'm not a nostalgic person. I love to play the drums, and I will play the drums. But if the time has come for me to, you know, make a living with something else, then I'll probably do that if I find something that I enjoy doing. You know, I'm not welded to the drums, although in a certain sense I am. You know, but it's important to be flexible and trying to see things the way they are. You know.
But with this medium, I mean, it's always going to be there in some form. But it's the person with the medium creating the message. But the medium, it doesn't really matter now. Really, we're going to be there, and we use whatever medium.
Well, okay, it's like this. The reason why I play drums the way I play drums today is simply because I believe I was born to play the drums, right? There's certain things, you know, I understand that I was given a talent, or I was granted the talent, or I was just lucky that I have a talent for music and for playing drums, which is below average. There's people out there that are more talented than I am, without a doubt. But I'm pretty happy with what I got in the first place. But I had to put a lot of work in it to, you know, to harvest it and make it make sense, right? So the reason why I play drums is because it was dealt to me. It was like, I am not a parachutist that goes to the stratosphere and jumps out. If you want to do that, you have to be born for it. I'm not a person that like dives like 20,000 miles deep in like the ocean, extreme stuff. I'm not an extreme sports. People who do those type of things, they were born to do those type of things. I feel I'm born to play the drums, and I want to use that to exercise, you know, or share within my circle of concern. You know, share it and go like, okay, I can actually do something with that makes the world a little bit better, you know.
Right, and I think that's really important because something really speaks to you, and like drums. When I look at drums, I still get excited like a kid, and I feel like they're like I'm related to them in some form, you know. And you get excited. Oh, and this one does what? Oh, it has this other tone. Oh, that's an interesting tone. That's an interesting thing. But just the fact that there are drums is really exciting. I've always been excited, and having that. You know, knowing that's part of your genetic almost. I mean, there must be, because otherwise something else would speak to you.
Look, I mean, to kind of sum it up in a way, because you know we can pussyfoot around like the issue. I think that, you know, that power, that magic of drums exists, and it's drummers' responsibility to find a way to share this with the rest of the world. It's not the job of the rest of the world to discover us. It's our responsibility to create something which is worthwhile their attention and their curiosity. That's what because in this time where we're going to get more and more, there's more and more distance from who we are and who we perceive to be with, like, you know, our avatars that platforms like Facebook create. You know, it's like, oh, my avatar has got 2,000 likes. You know, it's like a commodity, almost like money. Oh, I only have 300 likes, therefore I shall be depressed. All right, so we're getting more and more away from like who we actually are, and we're getting more isolated. And I think there is a longing in people, or sooner or later, with the more abstract everything gets, to have a little bit of like a connection to where we came from. And the drum is, an acoustic drum is an anchor to that. And we can revisit, and in a world that constantly changes, you're probably better off not into speculate into what's the next big thing, because it might happen or it might not happen. I think as far as where I'm coming from, I choose to stick to values that were true 5,000 years ago, or 500 years ago, or 50 years ago, and will be true in 50 years ago, in 50 years from now, or 500 years from now, or like whatever. Just go with nature. That will be always safe place to go. So go with this, find the simple things, find clarity, not perfection, etc. And I think you will be. I don't think that you will be fine, but I think you will be better off than if you try to hustle and, you know, put your chips there or there or there and maybe win or maybe lose. You know, that's kind of how I see it, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and very well said, and I think that's important. And each one of us will do it in a different way just because of our individual nature.
Yeah.
But I think the power of the drum, you said it. That's it.
Harness it, exploit it, and communicate it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.
Jojo. It was beautiful having you, and thank you for the discussion
No problem.
and insight.